With $17.9 trillion in GDP, significant influence in Asia, and their massive foreign exchange reserve, China is an undeniable titan of the global economy. With its inhabitants making up almost 1/5 of the world's population and its astounding pace of growth, it's a major player that shapes the global economic landscape. Yet beneath the grand spectacle of its GDP growth, a question persists that continues to intrigue economists and financial analysts worldwide. Is China potentially over-reporting its GDP growth? This isn't an abstract pondering. It carries substantial implications for investors, policymakers, and indeed anyone who seeks to comprehend the global economy. To really comprehend the implications of potential over-reporting and how this impacts your wallet, we as always have to ask ourselves a few important questions. So, how has the Chinese GDP developed during the last decades? How and why might China manipulate their GDP figures? How can we uncover the over-reporting of GDP growth in China? And finally, what are the implications of potential GDP over-reporting for China and the global economy? And what might be their actual GDP? China's economic story is nothing short of a modern-day miracle. In the span of just a few decades, it has morphed from a primarily agrarian society to the world's manufacturing hub and now a major player in the global digital economy. But how exactly has this transition unfolded? Post the Chinese Revolution in 1949, the country adopted centrally planned economics. In a centrally planned economy, major economic decisions are made by a central authority, such as the government. Central planning allows the government to marshal society's resources for goals that might not be achieved by market forces alone. Central planning is commonly associated with socialist or communist forms of government, best known from the Soviet Union. But the results were not as envisioned. The infamous Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution led to economic hardships and widespread hunger and lack of food. It became clear that change was necessary. This change arrived in 1978 with Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms, marking a pivotal turning point. These reforms shifted the focus from centrally planned economics to a more market-oriented approach, setting the stage for a period of intense economic liberalization. Special economic zones were established, foreign investment was welcomed, and private entrepreneurship encouraged. China got access to new technology and introduced its vast labor force to the world, resulting in rapid GDP growth. From 1979 to 2010, the country's annual GDP growth averaged almost 10%, the fastest sustained expansion by a major economy in history. This rapid development lifted millions out of poverty, and China emerged as the world's factory. But the story didn't end there. China's focus has been gradually shifting from low-end manufacturing to more high-tech industries and services. Its GDP composition has evolved accordingly, with services making up more than half of its GDP as of 2020. While these figures paint a compelling picture of China's economic ascendancy, it raises some intriguing questions. With such consistent and rapid growth, could there be more than what meets the eye? Could the numbers have been inflated to present a rosier picture? Gross domestic product, GDP, a key indicator of a nation's prosperity, is methodically calculated by economists using 5 primary factors: consumer spending, investment, government expenditure, exports, and imports. So how might this manipulation occur? The roots of this potential distortion trace back to the relationship between China's central government and its local counterparts. In China, there's a culture of performance-based legitimacy. The political legitimacy of local government officials often hinges on their ability to deliver high economic growth. They're under constant pressure to fulfill ambitious growth targets set by the central government, a pressure that can incentivize them to inflate their numbers. A study conducted by Frank Zhang at Yale University suggests that local Chinese governments often inflate GDP figures in order to meet targets. Some officials may do so endorsing projects that lack long-term economic value, such as unnecessary infrastructure investments. Meanwhile, some might entirely fabricate these figures. The logic is simple. The higher the GDP they report, the more competent they appear. If growth targets are not met, they can lose their job. But why would China tread down this path? Why potentially distort economic reality? The answers lie within the intricate matrix of politics and economics. Booming GDP figures don't just represent economic prosperity. They're a testament to the efficacy of the ruling party's policies. They're political ammunition that the government can use to justify its leadership and further consolidate its power. The implications of such potential manipulation are not confined to the domestic sphere. They reverberate across the global economy, casting a shadow of uncertainty over international economic relations. It raises questions about the reliability of China's economic data, impacting foreign investment decisions, bilateral trade negotiations, and global economic forecasts. Unraveling potential misrepresentation in GDP figures is no small feat. But thanks to satellites, lights, and a groundbreaking research paper by Luis R. Martinez, an assistant professor at the University of Chicago, we might be one step closer. In his study, Martinez proposes a uniquely illuminating method, using satellite images of nighttime lights. Yes, you heard it right. Analyzing the glow of city lights from space might just hold the key to unlocking the truth behind GDP figures. The answer lies in the close link between economic activity and electricity usage. Greater economic output often results in more usage of electricity, and hence more light. So, tracking the growth in nighttime lights can give us a unique vantage point to scrutinize the reported GDP figures. In his study, Martinez looked at a total of 184 countries over the span from 1992 to 2013, drawing a comparison between the expansion of each nation's GDP and the corresponding growth in lights. What he revealed was a striking correlation between the two. But as the research delved deeper, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Comparing the data of democratic free nations with those under autocratic rule, he discovered that the autocratic nations reported an unproportionally higher growth relative to their actual increase in nighttime lights. From 1992 to 2013, China's reported GDP grew by an astonishing 94%, but the growth in nighttime lights only accounted for about 57% of this. These discrepancies suggest potential over-reporting of economic activity. Of course, the method isn't flawless. Not all economic activities produce light, and the growth in energy-efficient technologies can affect the overall light output. But despite these limitations, the approach has proven to be an effective tool for exploring the veracity of China's GDP figures. The implications of this are profound, casting a long shadow over international economic relations. It brings into question the reliability of China's economic data. As of 2019, China accounted for about 28% of the global manufacturing output, surpassing the United States. But if the discrepancies in GDP figures hold true, the real size of China's manufacturing sector could be considerably smaller. Based on recent calculations by the team at Money Macros, China's actual GDP might be about 60% less than what's officially reported. Using Martinez's research as a foundation and extending it to 2021, they observed an intriguing pattern. From 1992 to 2021, China reported a consistent GDP growth between 14 and 8%. However, the Money Macros study indicates a more modest growth range between 6 and 2%. These are still some impressive growth figures. At this point, you might ask yourself if lights really is a better GDP indicator than China's official GDP numbers. It's a valid question. Yes, these are rough calculations, acknowledged by Martinez himself as being quite simple. However, there is reason to believe that these adjusted numbers might reflect the reality more accurately. Adding to Martinez's findings, another economist highlighted significant discrepancies in reported GDP figures during years of provincial governor elections in China, compared to data harder to manipulate, such as electricity consumption. Moreover, there's evidence from within China suggesting a system of rewards and penalties based on GDP growth targets for provincial governors. Meeting targets could mean promotions, while falling short could lead to being fired, providing a tempting motive for GDP figure inflation. Despite these findings, China's significance on the world stage remains undeniable. As a global manufacturing powerhouse, boasting a vast workforce, technological progress, and military strength, China will undoubtedly continue to be a key player in global affairs. Please like and subscribe. It helps us reach more people like you, people eager to understand the forces shaping their everyday economic reality. And finally, we always love hearing from our viewers, so please feel free to leave a comment below, whether you've got a question, a thought, or there's a particular topic you'd like us to cover in a future video. We value your input. We publish new videos every week, so until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and keep checking in with The Wallet Report.